Okay, to wrap up this project, I just wanted to show you a few more details you can add to just to make it look a little more finished and a little more realistic. I wanted to demonstrate too close up like this on how to make a tree, since it's a area that students have struggled with in the past. So let me just show you. Here's a couple lines, trunks right here. So I just start with the thick Sharpie, and I said to try to make the branches go up. So I just kind of scribble, just to start, kind of scribble back and forth. And like I mentioned before, if you want to draw a triangle with a pencil that you can erase later, if that helps you, that's fine too. If you are going off the edge of the paper like this, you still have to finish it like you're just seeing part of the tree. You don't want it to like teeter on the edge there. So again, you want to point at the top, and then you just kind of scribble on the sides, the way down, getting a little bit longer as you go. And I guess this is what I'm talking about. You want to end that. You do want them to be horizontal at the bottom, lest they're falling off the edge. And then I wanted to show you, when you're all done, what you can do to come back. If you don't have some that look like a tree shape, take a skinny Sharpie. Like here, I have some that look a little uneven, not really like an evergreen. So to make it a little bit sharper, definitely you want it to have a point at the top. And then just use that thin Sharpie to so you can see some branches, how it gets thinner. See, it's almost like thick, almost a black blob in the middle. You want to add more branches with a thin Sharpie so you can kind of see those details. Like right here again, there's not really a clear top to it. So make sure you have a nice tall top to your tree. And you can add a few more branches coming out. This one, again, just a little blob. So it's not too late if you don't think your trees look quite right. Take a thin Sharpie and try to add some more details. You shouldn't see a line where your trunk is. That's gonna be a thicker part of the tree. So you wanna come back. It's okay if you see some spaces in there, but you shouldn't see a line in the middle with just lines coming out. You need it to be a little more thick than that. And there's a couple more I could definitely keep working on. So that's how you want to finish the trees. Again, add more. If you don't think you have enough contrast with black areas in the snow, add more trees for sure. On the horizon line, a lot, you could add just a whole, and make them, some of them, touch and overlap. It's going to look more realistic if they're not perfectly spaced trees. Okay, so another thing you can do, we'll talk about just the ground first before the mountains. You can make those snow lines a little bit more interesting. So again, if you want to just kind of rough them up a little bit, if you think it looks too perfect, maybe some areas are a little bit thicker than others. I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. So maybe they're a little bit thicker or a little like a shadow where the trees hit it. So it's not this perfect little line right there. Same with here. If you want to add a little bit to that kind of dash line you have going on. So I would kind of continue to do that. And then just to add a little more texture, and I don't have my finished example with me right now, but if you just want to add a few kind of spots in the snow, it kind of looks like sand, but it also could look like the snow sort of shimmering in the moonlight, again, not perfectly spaced, but a cluster here and there, or kind of scattered around. That just breaks up the white and adds another layer of detail, I guess. So I would continue to add a few more lines, a few more spots for the snow, maybe even some more trees before I'm done with the ground. All right, so I did add some more trees to have some more contrast, some coming off the bottom, some going off the edge, more dots for kind of some snow texture. I even had some more lines in here for some snowbanks, just to break up again that white space. So moving on to the mountains, a few things you can do to, again, break up the white space. If you have some large white areas on your mountain, don't forget those breaks, which is just kind of following the direction of the face of the mountain here. It's almost like, you don't have to be perfect there, but it's almost like a backward lightning bolt. And just gonna fill in the same sort of texture for the rest of the shadows. But then to kind of make your shadows more interesting, or I guess let's start with the line of the mountains more interesting. If you want to make them more jagged, you know, and more sharp, then doesn't matter if you want to take your thin or thick Sharpie, but the line, not the shadow areas, but the lines of the mountain, if you want to make it a little bit thicker and a little bit kind of more jagged with some sharp edges with your marker, you could do that. Makes it stand out a little bit more. That way you can, the example again that I don't have right now, the lines are a little bit thicker for the mountain, so it does make them stand out a little bit more. You see how I'm just sort of sharpening the points and the angles of some of the mountains. That's an option that you can do to kind of, you can see how it just stands out a little bit more with those dark areas. And then you could come back, and if you did use a thick Sharpie for your texture, if you want to come back and just kind of fill in, again, we're using some variety or contrast, different things, so different thicknesses of lines. That's going to be more interesting for your final design. So I'm just going to maybe fill in some of the spaces a little bit. That's just another way you can make it stand out. And then also just some texture lines of the mountains. So once I'll probably add a few more breaks or cracks or whatever you want to call it in the mountain. But then I might come back and just add a few more lines just to make it a little more interesting too. With the thin Sharpie, not the thick. You don't want, there's not going to be, like for instance, well, you want your lines to be pointy. You don't want, if you're using a thick Sharpie line, you don't want it to have like a little square edge, like it's a really skinny rectangle line. You want it to end with a point on something like this. It's gonna look more natural if you're dealing with kind of a rocky landscape like this. So I would use both thin and thick Sharpies to kind of clean up your mountains, your shadows, and make your lines maybe a little more rugged, more mountain-like. Just to finish the texture and add some more contrast to your mountains. All right, so you can see I made my lines thicker just to make them have more contrast against the shadow, more pointy. I didn't leave any areas like kind of I tried to make a point on about every kind of line around the mountain. I added a few more breaks, some texture on the mountains, and I did even add a few more lines with the thin Sharpie to kind of separate, so it looked like there was, as you're moving farther away, there's a little bit of shadow too, where the mountains meet the ground there on that horizon line. So just, again, some more options to completely finish this. And then finally, if you notice, there's some white stars in the sky. I just got these white gel pens. And they don't work the best on cardboard, but they do work. They're brand new, so they're not, it's not that they're dried out, and it might seem like they are, but if you just want to scatter a few dots to look like they're stars in the sky, again, don't make it perfect. Don't have them perfectly spaced. Have some kind of clustered together, some bigger than others. You're going to see them more in the dark parts. If you have a lot of light yellow, you're not gonna, I wouldn't put them as thick down there as they are in the darker part of your sky. You can also make a star that kind of has lines going through it like this. Just make them look like they're shining a little bit more, they're bigger. So that's another option, just to add another detail in your sky. and to finish it